try this again. Hey everyone, my name is Ingalandia. I'm head of ecosystem development for Sovryn, the #1 Bitcoin DeFi ecosystem in the universe, in the metaverse as well. I'm very excited to lead this discussion on some new updates, everything from the Sovryn Dollar to Zero to development updates and phase 2 of our strategy. So let me share the agenda slides and welcome Edan Yago to this stage. Just give me 1 second.
Hello, Sovrins. I'll let Ingalandia introduce the slideshow. Today we will be talking about, so you can skip straight to the agenda screen. Today there's a number of things to cover. We'll be talking about the Sovryn Dollar and new products related to the Sovryn Dollar. Talk about Zero and continued demand. Where we are with the overall evolution of the project, our standard development update, and the main focus of today, as with all community calls, is community discussion. So, with regards to the Sovryn Dollar, we will talk about this more in the development section. But there are several components that we've been discussing now for a while that are near to introduction. We recently had SIP allow for the use of Sovryn Dollar as collateral. This will allow for the introduction of a Sovryn Dollar lending pool, which will be an additional source of demand and also a new way to borrow and lend with Sovryn Dollar and a way to earn yield on the Sovryn Dollar. It also allows for margin trading with the Sovryn Dollar, and with the deeper liquidity available in the AMM, that kind of trading activity should be more attractive than was available with XUSD, although the difference is quite marginal. We also have one of our ecosystem projects, Babelfish, about to introduce incentive curves. They have of upcoming SIPs with regards to that. The incentive curves should help incentivize continued provision of liquidity from in the form of stable coins from other chains, allowing for easier and less frictionful and more liquidity available for swapping from Sovryn Dollar to other stable coins. And towards the end of the next sprint, we expect that we'll be able to introduce new incentives for the stability pool, which will help secure Zero, will help protect in the case of liquidations, and also is a highly scalable, we believe a highly scalable method of generating demand when needed for Sovryn Dollars. A few weeks ago, I published an analysis and a model related to that can be found in the forum. So, moving on to the next slide. Let's talk about where we are with the project. A quick recap of how things have been evolving recently. Next slide, please. Let's start with revenue. Next slide. So one key question that Alan Farrington, a well-known Bitcoiner, has been hammering home again and again and again with relation to crypto and to DeFi is, where is the yield supposed to be coming from? Where is the yield? And we have been very careful in constructing Sovryn to provide a strong answer to that question. Most crypto projects out there have managed to utilize Ponzinomics, tokenomics, in order to drive liquidity, and as the primary mechanism in doing so. And we've also seen a proliferation of proof of stake systems, which present to users the opportunity to stake and earn yield, but the yield is earned in the token of the project, and effectively acts purely as an inflationary mechanism. So rather than being true yield, it represents a redistribution of value from those who are not staking to those who are staking, and is an extremely recursive system. Sovryn has taken a very different approach and a very difficult approach. In Sovryn, the protocol earns yield and pays this yield out in the form of Bitcoin and now Sovryn Dollar to stakers. There is no inflation or dilution of SOV holders or of the SOV token using that methodology. And it is a very difficult path for us to take for two reasons. First, it means that we need to deliver true yield, which is a challenge that is avoided if you're going down the path of inflation. And second, if we think of the metaphor or the analogy of a company, which also is a mechanism for generating yield, or a business, it's as if the business were to take the revenue that it was generating and distribute it to the users. And so the Sovryn Exchequer has needed to manage very carefully the budget, the community budget, in order to make sure that we are not spending excessively, because the revenue driven from the protocol is not captured by the Exchequer. And finally, usually what you will see is a ramp-up period, where projects are not profitable in order to reach a degree of scale which allows for profitability. Being under the onus of delivering value from day one is a very, very difficult hurdle to cross. Even Bitcoin is driven not by the fees that users pay to miners, but by the block subsidy. To this day, represents by far the most significant driver of revenue to miners. So the path that Sovryn took was extremely strict in terms of the principles that we needed to meet. And we've struggled with that. But I think we have, to a great extent, turned a corner with respect to that. In other words, despite the magnitude of the challenge, it is a challenge that, together, to a great extent, we've managed to overcome. And I say this because of, next slide. Right now, Sovryn Protocol is generating an average yield of 10.8%. Now, this is over the last 90 days. So if you look at the average profitability or revenue over the last 90 days, and you look at the price of BTC to SOV today, if you were to purchase at today's price, you were to stake now, and you were to anticipate that revenue were to maintain where it is, this is the type of yield that you would be able to expect. Not paid out in SOV token, but paid out in BTC and Sovryn Dollar. And if you were to max stake, which is the next slide, we're looking at close to 15% yield. Now, this is a very, very high, exorbitantly high yield. It's sort of a hidden secret almost. You guys are aware of a yield generating opportunity which most of the world is not yet aware of. Now, there is no guarantee that these yields will continue, and there are multiple different variables that could change it. The profitability of the project going forward, the price of SOV, the number of stakers. But the fact that we've managed to do this and have been doing this now for 2 quarters I think is extremely impressive, is a huge opportunity, and is a massive indication that we are generating real organic value for users and for stakers. So I think this is something extremely important. It's a very important milestone. It's something that we should be monitoring. There'll be a dashboard which will be made publicly available to make it easier to track this. And we should be looking to, as we bring Bitocracy and staking to DEP 2.0, highlight these numbers because they make the whole thing far more legible. But this is the kind of solid footing that I think we can be very proud of having generated. And this is one of several aspects of what I think is allowing us to start thinking about, and should allow us to start thinking about Sovryn as moving beyond, or starting to get into a point where it can move beyond its first phase, its alpha phase, and see Sovryn becoming a more mature project. And what that maturity entails is also a change in the strategy and a change in focus. And so I'd like to ask for the next slide, please. So what does this next phase look like? So there will be a continuation of development in features, in improvements, in UI, in much the same way that we've been doing up until now. However, in addition to that, there will be other things, and I think these things will be taking precedence over time. This is not an instant phase shift, but I think we're setting ourselves up for this transitional phase, where the next slide, please, where we can talk about being in phase 2, and what phase 2 looks like. To my mind, is the ability for us to concentrate on two different things. One is accessibility. So we've been a little bit shy about marketing or promoting or evangelizing many aspects of Sovryn because the maturity wasn't there, and we didn't want users' first experiences to be disappointing, except for the hardcore who were willing to sort of crawl over, all of you on the call who were willing to crawl over glass, right, in order to participate and be early participants and contributors and supporters and users of the system. As the system is firming up and maturing, we can look to expand our view and focus more on growing the type of audience and the type of awareness around Sovryn. So that means DEP 2.0, but it also means mobile accessibility, which will allow us to reach a much larger audience. There's already one project that you guys have heard of, which is Sovryn Financial, which is looking to present Sovryn and build on Sovryn, what is effectively a neobank-like experience, but self-custodial. You might want to full screen it. Thanks. And there are additional initiatives that we could be looking to take, or partnerships that we can be looking to take in order to provide better mobile accessibility. The larger, more mainstream user base are mobile first, and the majority of people who end up coming to Sovryn.com and even Sovryn.app are mobile users, and the drop-off there is basically 100%. And so there's a whole new audience for us to potentially capture if we're able to introduce mobile. We've also discussed previously the SDK, making it much easier for third parties, both dApps, but even more so centralized or semi-centralized players to build on Sovryn. And that also means dev relations to encourage devs, both in terms of devs who would build new products in our ecosystem and devs who are building wallets, exchanges, lending platforms, and all the rest to integrate, view, use, and provide their audience with accessibility to Sovryn. And then finally, exchanges. As you guys are aware, we've been quite reticent and haven't made aggressive moves to court exchanges. But exchanges represent a significant vector in terms of people who hear about projects. And so I think over the coming period, we should look to become more open to the idea of additional listings. So that's on the accessibility side. And on the platform side, it's now about building those more underlying technologies, which are going to allow us to grow, to be more performant, and to provide things to the world which no other platform is providing, to truly become the platform in which you build a world on Bitcoin. One aspect of this is we've already introduced submarine swaps, but there's a lot that can be done for a deeper, more feature-rich Lightning Network integration. This could include things like the SDK that there's being worked on to make it easier to integrate with Sovryn for developers of Lightning wallets. It could be the introduction of the Sovryn Dollar to the Lightning Network. It could be deeper liquidity and potentially merging fast BTC with the submarine swaps to allow for easier on and off integrations. Additionally is peg improvements. The peg is a core component of what we're looking to do. We need to have as trustless a peg as possible, and ultimately a fully trustless peg, so that using Bitcoin with Sovryn is as near or identical to using Bitcoin with main chain. And there's a world of peg improvements that we can be looking to introduce. This is a very, very hard problem, but we don't, so far, haven't shied away from hard problems, and I think we've had some success in conquering them. Additionally, throughput and scalability. We had a fantastically designed perpetual swap system. We have clear ideas around how we could improve trading if we had the throughput and scalability to allow for it. Currently, with the current substrate that we're using with rootstock, that is not available. But we've already spoken for around 2 years now on how roll-ups can be and probably will be the path forward here. And the technology over the last 2 years has improved significantly. And I think there's now an opportunity to start thinking about this more deeply. And indeed, that thinking has already happened. I would, if any of you aren't aware of it, John Light put out a fantastic paper on rollups to Bitcoin, and I strongly recommend giving it a read. It is a roadmap for what the future of Bitcoin could look like. Privacy is another aspect. For the Sovryn Dollar in particular, the ability to have private transactions can be a game changer. But generally, one of the challenges with Bitcoin, with blockchain, with all of these systems is they are transparent, which is great for governance, but not great for transactions or the activity of everyday users. And so there's a lot that can be done, again, with zero knowledge proofs around privacy. And here again, I think John Light has put a great deal of effort into thinking through this problem. And not only him, other devs within the core team, as well as devs from the community, have been proposing ideas. And some third-party projects have been discussing things with us, and we haven't had the bandwidth or the focus to think about these things. But over the next phase, I think that can become more of a priority. And finally, what this all leads to is a platform for building an economy and an ecosystem of projects on Bitcoin. Sovryn, up until now, has primarily focused on building basic tools, basic primitives, building on the application layer. And this is because our view has been that we need to provide usefulness rather than hype. We need to prove the need for things in the real world and the ability to execute on them before looking to build a platform, right? We don't want to build, you don't want to host a party, put a lot of effort into it, and nobody comes. We needed to make sure that the community was here, that the tooling was here, that the use cases were here, and I think to a great extent we've built those basic primitives. Now let's build an economy and an ecosystem around that, and go from being Sovryn, which is primarily an application layer suite, to a suite of applications built as the core of the platform on which we build a world on Bitcoin. We can discuss these things further when we get to the open community discussion. And with that, I hand it over back to you, Ingemar. I think maybe we can talk about the dev update and product update first, and then we can open it up to the community conversation.
Hey, thanks. Can you just directly go to the next slide, please? Awesome, thanks. So, since we spoke the last time, in the last month, we had so many releases that I cannot even fit them on a single slide. It's really crazy, but good kind of crazy. So, first thing first, we launched the new Sovryn web app on sovryn.app. That is the new Zero interface, and also the launch of the Sovryn Dollar and the connection of the two protocols, so that transactions like borrowing on Zero or paying back a loan is possible directly with the Sovryn Dollar without having to go through CUSD. At the same time, we launched the DLLR AMM pool on the Alpha app, and made it possible to trade DLLR on the AMM then as well, and it was added to the swap and the spot trading interface. Shortly after, we upgraded the staking contracts, and thereby finally correcting the vesting stakes, which were keeping us from distributing the fee sharing rewards. Since then, this has been re-enabled, and fees are being distributed as intended. We updated the liquidity mining contract in two ways. We had a smart contract logic update to allow us to introduce liquid SOB rewards, which are enabled for the new DLLR AMM pool. And we updated the config as well. We reduced the SOB liquidity mining rewards of the SOB and the XUSD AMM pools. The SOB AMM pool was reduced to 12,000 SOB weekly rewards, and the XUSD pool to 7,500 weekly rewards. And just today, we introduced DLLR lending and borrowing. There is now a DLLR lending pool where you can deposit Sovryn dollars and start earning interest. And it is possible to borrow the dollar with SOV, or BTC, or BPRO as collateral. Also, DLLR can now be used as collateral for borrowing RBTC or BPRO. In addition to that, there were several small or bigger and smaller front-end updates improving the quality of life. So on the new Sovryn app, we introduced the EIP 2612 support for Ledger users, so they can now interact with the Sovryn Dollar in a single transaction, which was not possible before. We updated the interface to reflect the changes on the zero fee floors. We updated the gas limits to prevent failing transactions because of out-of-gas issues. We improved the user experience when signing up for email notifications. The statistics in the ecosystem are now refreshed every block, so the statistics table now stays in sync. On the convert page, the amounts on the entry field are now always reset to 0 after the transaction is confirmed. We added a new loading image to replace the simply loading text that was previously in place, and many other small refactoring changes, bug fixes, and quality of life improvements. On the Sovryn Alpha application, we also had several updates, such as the update to the pool page to accommodate various changes to the liquidity mining reward amounts. We updated the rootstock node used by the Plutocracy app so that the page content loads faster. Some of you might have realized that waiting on the Plutocracy page to load was always a bit, but it needed patience, and now it's just nice, fast, and smooth. So I'm happy about that. We improved the pricing display on the swap, spot, and margin trading pages. We improved the user experience when signing up for email notifications. And most importantly, users can now sign up for limit order alerts and margin call alerts separately. We updated the gas limits also here to prevent failing transactions. We changed the pool and rewards pages to accommodate the liquid rewards update and added the mint TVL to the TVL section of the homepage. And I think that these lists of releases is not yet even exhaustive. So there was a lot going on in the last month, and it was really amazing work from the entirety of the dev team. Could you move on to the next slide, please, Ingamar? Thank you. We are working on SOB rewards for the zero stability pool, which is currently not providing any subsidies other than the profit generated with liquidations themselves. So this is something which is coming. We are also working on another update to the fee sharing contract. This is because of an issue we are facing with mostly new stakers who didn't have any stakes during the first 100 fee sharing checkpoints, and therefore the smart contract doesn't find anything to claim and fails. So this is currently in progress, and we expect to have that ready soon, and thereby then also enabling the new stakers to claim their share of the fee rewards. There's no reason to worry in the meantime because the fees are being accumulated as expected. So they will just become available for claiming as soon as we have the update. We are introducing updates to the Sovryn Token Bridge interface. That's mostly to dynamically detect which tokens are being paused on the Babelfish protocol. Like when USDC depegged, we had to put the whole XUSD flow into maintenance mode, just because we didn't have the token pause integration on our UI. So for this to not happen in the future, we are integrating that directly into the interface. We are also working on zero redemption alerts, which is something many users have been repeatedly asking for. This will send you an alert if your line of credit is being redeemed against, and you can tag that then as the trigger to either calibrate your line of credit or buy more Bitcoin or whatever action you prefer to take as a consequence. We are starting to prepare the documentation for the dev portal. This is important because as more and more integrators are or it's more and more parties are interested in integrating Sovryn, we have to provide dev support. And currently we have a lot of documentation scattered around different places. And with having everything neat and tidy in one dev portal where all of the information can be found, it will just be so much easier for integrators. And at the same time, it will save time for our developers because we will have to provide less direct support. We are also migrating some functionality from the Sovryn Alpha app to the new Sovryn web app. And then we are working on a number of quality of life improvements, where the most important ones are better links between the two applications, so it's easier to switch between the alpha and the new web app, and slippage tolerance when borrowing on 0. And I guess these are, there's more work in progress than what is on this list, but I think that these are the most important points. And that's it with the updates from my side. So thanks. Back to you, Ingalandia.
Ingalandia, you've become very faint. Better. Yes. Yes, so I think this echoes what we were talking about, accessibility. There are, if you look across all of DeFi, you find that the number of users is very small in comparison to centralized alternatives, equivalents, and that those protocols which see the greatest amount of use also tend to see significant majority of use through third-party applications. We would be very surprised to see anything different with Sovryn, and so I think as our confidence grows in the protocol, we will shift more and more focus to things like the SDK, things like working with third parties and even centralized parties to integrate the technology that we've developed, the protocol that is Sovryn, with what they're doing. Ultimately, my sense is that the vast majority of users are not interested in which chain they are on. What they are interested, and this is true far beyond crypto, this is true everywhere. What they're interested in, what mass of users are interested in, is a frictionless experience and the ability to solve problems that they have. I think we have the ability to solve very, very important problems. We have a truly decentralized stablecoin backed by the best collateral in the world. We have the ability to borrow with Bitcoin. We have the ability to trade Bitcoin and those Sovryn dollars against assets, and we can expect to see more and more assets become available. And we can also expect to see more projects being built within our platform. But what will allow all of this to be experienced by a larger number of users is making that as simple as possible. And so I've been seeing comments in the various channels talking about the need for Sovryn to be on other chains. And there's definitely a user base out there. It's important, and it's something that we should be looking and thinking about in various ways, such as exporting Sovryn Dollar to other chains and to other protocols, and potentially thinking about how we can make our technology available there. But that to me is the much smaller battle. The bigger battle is wrapping the products that have been built on the platform into extremely simple and familiar interfaces, and making clear to people why they would want to use these things. So I think we are getting to the point where that can become much more of a focus, and I think we are well set to respond to that challenge and to meet that challenge. Was that answer helpful? I would also, this is that's my view, but let's open this up a little bit. I'm sure people here have ideas or maybe have a different view. I'd be interested to hear them. Yes. Yeah, I'm not sure either. Who was the question by? Yes, possibly with price appreciation. Kranik, if you want to clarify either here or in the channel, that would be awesome. Other topics which I've seen be discussed recently were questions around Zero and Sovryn Dollar, as well as redemptions, which might be something that people here would be interested in discussing. We've also had recently 4 weekly conversations around Sovryn Dollar governance and Zero, and we expect to have the next one in 2 weeks, and those can be summarized, and there's debate occurring on them in the forums. And another topic that has come up is the topic of the platform, and questions around things like a sovereign chain. So if these are topics that people would like to raise and discuss, now is a good time. Sure. So there are no developments as such, and there isn't such a thing yet as a sovereign chain. There is reason to expect that we will want to develop a blockchain, which will, or several blockchains, which will allow us to extend the functionality of Sovryn and provides things like privacy, throughput, scalability, the ability to develop with other virtual machines, and a long list of other things such as peg improvements. And this is something which I think we should be discussing more frequently. And I look forward to trying to host a conversation around this in the very near future. But at this point in time, there is no such thing as a sovereign chain.
So, just a question on that. Is this something that ideally we ourselves sort of lead? Like, if there were um, a potential avenue at hand to actually build something, do we ideally want the case where we're kind of leading this development, or would we prefer to kind of sit back and see what other people are exploring?
I think that the approach that Sovereign has taken has proven valuable and is something we should continue. Sovereign should shamelessly steal any technology which looks promising and which has been validated. But at the same time, what we're developing is unique, and there's really no other project which is trying to achieve the same goals or aims as Sovereign and truly build the platform on which a world on Bitcoin can be built. The ultimate goal, as I see it, from a technology perspective, is to allow for trustless, cryptographically trustless roll-ups to Bitcoin, so that different platforms, different chains can trustlessly utilize the security of Bitcoin, Bitcoin proof of work, as well as have a trustless movement of Bitcoin between the different chains. As far as we know, right now, that would require some changes, soft fork changes to Bitcoin, but we can potentially get very close without those changes. And I think it makes sense for Sovryn to spearhead the effort for us to eventually get there. The holy grail, so to speak, of truly trustless extendability and extensibility for Bitcoin. I'm very interested to hear other people's views and thoughts on this. If in Ingalandia there aren't further questions, what may make sense to do is to end the recording, since frequently we find that a lot of the most vigorous conversation and debate happens once the recording has ended.
you.